Hey, what's up everyone, Danny here. This is my entry for a collaborative competition I'm in called the Techvengers Infinity War Build-Off. If you haven't seen it yet, be sure to check out our trailer video for this, which I'll have in the title card up here, as well as in the description. It's only a few minutes long and it'll explain who's all part of the competition as well as all the rules. For this competition, I chose to do a theme based on the Hulk, so let's take a look at what I came up with. So just to quickly recap, here are the rules and guidelines for the competition. Feel free to pause the video if you want to read through them. But yeah, without further ado, let's check out some glamour shots of my Hulk themed PC build. The first thing I did when I got the case was take it all apart so that I could cut fan holes in the front panel because I really wanted to set it apart from the stock look, even though the fans would have worked perfectly fine with the included side bracket. I taped it up so that I could mark it and make the measurements I needed to locate the two holes with a center punch. Then I used a 120mm circular bimetal hole saw attached to a drill to cut through it. This process took a really long time because one, it's metal on metal cutting, but two, also because this is a very large circumference, so you know the amount of teeth and the cutting surface is really big. So even with plenty of lube, the teeth still bit into the metal and stopped the drill motor quite often if I didn't go slow. So I did have to spend a good few hours slowly sawing away. But eventually the holes were cut and I filed down the edges and the end product came out really nicely in my opinion. An alternate way to cut these holes would have been to use a Dremel with a cutting disc or like a jigsaw. Both of those of which I did consider, but I didn't go with them because I think it'd be pretty hard to get nearly perfect circles using those methods. Next up was a lot of spray painting. I used this Rust-Oleum 2x Ultra Cover enamel paint and primer. I had it in green, purple, and then also this matte clear enamel. They're pretty cheap. It was about $4 a can from Home Depot and I used 2 green cans, 1 purple can, and 1 clear can. So it cost roughly $18 after tax and I ended up with about half a can of each color left over when I was finished. Spraying took a very long time because I didn't want to go overboard on each coat because that could cause dripping or like uneven layers. So I allowed a decent amount of time for drying between the coats. And I probably spent an entire week progressively slowly painting the case and masking it off and getting all the layers on there, as well as painting all of the removable pieces. So like the feet, the hard drive cages, the caddies, the SSD mounts, the expansion slot brackets. I basically painted everything. After the primary painting was done, I did some masking to get accent colors on the side panel, since leaving it only green would have been too plain for my taste. So I carefully taped around the hexagon design so that I could paint them purple, and I masked off a section to color the pants of the Hulk vinyl that I was going to put on so that they would be purple when it was applied. Since the vinyl has some pretty thin lines, this was a pain to do because if the mask job wasn't done correctly, the purple wouldn't have stayed in the lines and the entire panel would have had to been repainted. With the vinyls, you don't really get a second chance if you mess up, because once it's applied to the surface, there's no really going back. It's really hard to remove without ruining it, like it'll either wrinkle or rip or something. Lining up the pants with the purple mask section was a lot more difficult than I had imagined before I even started the project, but thankfully I got through it with no issues, and it ended up lining up really well. I think I'm the most proud of the side panel out of the entire build. I mean, in terms of mods, it's pretty simple. It's just a paint job with a vinyl applied to it, but I just think it looks so cool. For the top of the case, I went with a simple lettered logo, and it was much easier to apply. The total cost of the vinyls was $25, which I bought online from a Redditor that actually advertises his vinyl services on the PC Master Race and Hardware Swap subreddits. The In-Win 101 comes with either red or blue LEDs for the clear acrylic front piece, but none of those colors match my theme, so instead I bought a purple LED strip from eBay for $1. There's a bunch of these going around on eBay, but for the strips that have either Molex or SATA connectors, they're a lot more expensive. They're like $5 or so. So I looked for a purple LED strip that just had bare wire leads that were advertised for like automotive uses, and I soldered on a junk Molex connector to it to make it connect to the power supply. I hot glued the LED strip into place and it pointed directly directly into the clear acrylic, and now it glows purple when the computer is on to match the rest of the build. The fans I used for this build are Aigo Halo LED ring fans. I got a 3-pack in green and a 3-pack in purple. I got it all on eBay and it cost me just over $51 for all 6 fans. I know this was a lot of the budget because it was essentially 1/3 of the $150 we had set for the competition, but the way I saw it was that I got each of the fans for around $8. The case comes with 0 fans out of the box and it supports up to 6, so populating even with like plain fans would normally run around $5 a fan. So I figured, you know, why not spend a few more bucks to get some good looking fans to match the theme. And RGB would have been too expensive even with the knockoff brands, and I wouldn't have easily been able to get the 2 solid colors I wanted using just one RGB header on the motherboard or from like an RGB hub. So one thing you may have noticed is that so far I haven't talked about any of the core specs of the build, and there's a reason for that. As stated in the rules, costs of the core components are not factored into the budget, and the build is not going to be judged on performance, only on aesthetics. And the main reason for doing this is because none of us are rich, so we can't easily just go out and just drop money on a complete build just for the sake of the competition like some of the bigger channels can. So we decided to save money by using components we already had on hand. It's just the best we could do, you know. You'd be surprised at how hard it is to bring this many channels together for a build competition and then to come up with the rule set that everyone agrees on. Now imagine on top of that, trying to get everyone to go out and spend like $700 to put together a build from scratch that performs well and looks really good. Yeah, that wasn't gonna happen. So for my cooler, I only had a Cryorig H7, not the quad Lumi version with RGB, just the plain first generation H7. So to spice it up a bit, I put one of the Aigo fans on there. For the RAM, I went with 2 sticks of HyperX Furies because I don't have anything nicer than this on hand. But for the GPU, I was able to use my personal GTX 1070 for the Win Edition to take advantage of the RGB to change it to purple so that it fit my color scheme. For the remaining core components, I used a Ryzen 3 1300X with a V350 motherboard because I had those available and free at the moment. For the power supply, I went with a cheap EVGA B-Stock 600 watt 80 plus white label that I often talk about on the channel. These are like 20 bucks. And I use this mainly because I wanted to sleeve the cables, and this was going to be my first time doing so, and I didn't want to potentially mess up any of my nicer power supplies. So what I did was I bought 25 feet of green and purple Paracord 550 on Amazon, and it was roughly $6 for each color, so in total I spent about $12. The method I went with was sleeving the direct cables instead of making extensions, which is what I've more commonly seen. So I went with the cheaper kind of ghetto method. The hardest part about doing this was definitely disconnecting the terminals from the connector. Basically what you have to do is push the really tight pins on the side so that they can slip out, but there isn't much room between the plastic housing and the terminal head to do so it can take a while. And also you have to keep in mind that you have to do this for each pin. So if you count the main ones, that's 23 for the ATX connector, 8 for the CPU power, and 16 for the PCIe cables. That's a lot of wires, and since this was my first time doing this, I was really slow and it took me forever. Once you get the terminal out, you sleeve it through the paracord, and then you put a small piece of shrink tubing at the end and heat it up with the heat gun. This melts the paracord fibers to clean them up, and it tightly wraps the sleeve on the cable so it doesn't move. Then you insert it back in and repeat 50 or so more times. About halfway through, I got the hang of it, and I definitely noticed myself getting quicker, but I still need to work on my shrink tube estimations because some of mine were sticking out of the connector quite a bit. From far away, it's not that noticeable, but up close you can see that there's room for improvement. To wrap up the power supply, I bought some cable combs because I want to get the full effect of sleeve cables, and you only do so if they're nice and lined up. A complete black set from Amazon cost me just over $7, which I have no idea why it costs this much for what seems to be small plastic pieces that should be able to be mass produced over in China, but I couldn't find anything cheaper than that even on like AliExpress and eBay. I mean, I think it was worth it even with that price because it makes the sleeve job look so much nicer when they're all lined up. The front fans were mounted using neodymium magnets, which I bought on eBay for $5. I've always been a fan of using magnets to attach things because there's no adhesive, there's no moving mechanisms like a latch or a hook, there's just a magnetic force pulling the two objects together, and in the case of these neodymium magnets, or more commonly known as rare earth magnets, it's a really strong force, so I was able to mount them with no problems even though I used really thin discs. I just super glued them to the fans and then attached them to the case, and it was as simple as that. I bought a couple of fan filters for less than $1 each and then attached them to the back side of the fans so that they wouldn't block the halo ring effects from the front side, but they can still easily be removed and cleaned and dusted when needed. Because I attached the fans to the front of the case with magnets and they weren't supposed to be there, another small case modification I had to do was cut out a small section of the front bracket that held the power button because it interfered with the front fans. So I just took a Dremel with a cutting disc to it and took off a section that was in the way and then cleaned it up with a sanding band. And yeah, that's about everything I did to get the final product that you see here. So if we take a look at how much I spent per the rules and guidelines, my total comes in just over $130 as summarized here. There's about $20 left on the table, which I did spend on some green LED RAM heatsinks from AliExpress, but unfortunately the seller never shipped them, so I have to go and get my refund from PayPal now, and I didn't have time to make use of the remaining cash. And on that note, that's gonna wrap it up for this video. If you liked the build or enjoyed watching this, please be sure to give us a thumbs up and get subscribed and hit that bell notification if you want to see more content as I upload it to the channel. Be sure to definitely check out the other Avengers theme builds from the other channels. I'll have them all listed in the description below so you can get to them there. But let me know in the comments how you thought I did with the build. Like, what was your favorite part about it and what you disliked about it? You know, what suggestions would you have on how it could have been better? I think some things that I could have improved on, aesthetically anyways, were the use of RGB RAM. Like, I could have set it to green or purple to match the theme, or maybe use like a flashier cooler, since both of those wouldn't have affected the budget based on the rules. And it would have been cool to also work with acrylic sheets, like to make like a custom LED backlit video card plate or something like a power supply shroud that lights up. But I'm not sure if I would have been able to fit that in the remaining budget, nor would I have had enough time to finish it. So maybe I could do that in like a different mod build video in the future, who knows. But yeah, I just want to wish all the other channels good luck in the competition and say thank you for letting me be a part of this collaboration. I really do appreciate it. For voting, we've recruited our good friend Mark from the Scatterbolt channel to help out. Next week, he'll host a video that will present all of our builds at once and will have details on how to vote. So keep your eyes peeled for that by subscribing to his channel so that you're notified when it goes live. And big thanks to Mark for doing that. I also want to thank all of you, the viewers, as always, for watching and for supporting the channel and, you know, leaving comments and all that stuff. I really do appreciate all that too. And I can't, you know, express that enough. But yeah, I will see you guys all in the comments as well as in the next video. Bye.
I have an army. We have a hope.